Hello Painting 1. Today we're going to be continuing using color intensity in Chiaroscuro by doing a couple of studies from the photographs I'm showing you. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with planning out the page and starting our gesture. Now on the left, I'm going to show the colors that I'm using to create the painting in the palette area. When painting, you're always adding the background first. In the photograph, you see that it's a very, very dark blue, so I'm using blue and black for the most part. Now the red fabric has more lights and shadows in it, so I am using red and black, but I'm also dulling out the red with green and using vermilion to make highlights. The orange is obviously orange, and then you can see me using the blue in only the areas that need to get duller so that the strong orange is only in one place. Where the shadows get darker, I add a small amount of black and then create highlights in yellow and in white to create the illusion. You have to balance the highlight and the shadows. Little leaves on top, using mostly red to outline and smudging it in so that I can create the illusion. Now moving on to the grapes. The grapes are a little bit more complicated, obviously because there are more little things to draw. Starting with the gesture, okay, just using a little piece of charcoal and just planning out where everything goes as accurately as I can, trying to make sure that I plan everything out. Once I have the whole drawing done, I'm going to start working again from the background forward, starting to draw the red fabric. Now the red fabric does have a little bit of chiaroscuro in it, so I am going to be using green in the shadows so that I can dull the red out and make the illusion that the light is affecting the red fabric, right? Once I have that, I have to mix the specific color of the grapes. The grapes are a chartreuse. It's a mixture of yellow and green, and it's very pale, so there's white involved. So mixing yellow, green, and white, I create the grapes. I use a little bit more of a pale yellow color from my pastel set to do the highlights and little white reflections, and I use red in the shadows in the grapes because the red is going to dull out the green and create the shadows. In reverse, right, I'm using red as the shadow color inside of the leaves and using yellow to create the little veins and the little kind of design elements inside of the leaf. Once you get enough practice, you should try to do a more complicated setup. Okay, so here we have objects that are not only being affected by the light, but also they have reflected colors in them and patterns in them, right? So starting off with the gesture, you want to plan everything out. Using your charcoal pencil, you want to make sure that everything's kind of in the right place and is the right size, and that you're using your observation to make the drawing as accurate as you can. Okay, so then once I have everything in place, I'm going to start with my dark blue background. The blue is darker on one side than it is on the other, and I'm adding a little bit of orange to make it less strong because I want the stronger colors in the objects themselves. Then I'm going to start on the white of the bowl. Now notice that the white isn't only white, because when you have white surfaces, they reflect all the colors around them. So you're going to notice that I put a little bit of the same amber that's in the pear. Okay, when I move on to the pear, I create a base tone, and then using purple and yellows, I make the shadows and the highlights. On the front side of the bowl, using my white and my black to do the chiaroscuro, but you're going to notice that I also put a little bit of blue and a little bit of the green from the apple inside of the white so that the white reflects some of the colors that are around it. White surfaces reflect color. The green apple has a base of green. I add a little bit of white and yellow to create the highlights, and I use my red to dull out the shadows with a little bit of black in the deep shadows. Now the crab apple has a pattern. After creating the base red color, right, and I do the shadows with green, I use vermilion to create the pattern in the crab apple, because the crab apple has those little vermilion and yellow lines going through the red. So once you do your base color and you create the highlights and the shadows, you can add the pattern right on top of it. And when you blend it together with your finger, those colors will be picked up. Then I have the lemon. The lemon, outside lemon is actually a pretty dark green. So I'm actually mixing black into the green to make it a little bit darker, a value darker. Using red to make the shadows within that and then blending it in with my finger. And then where the shadows need to get darker, adding just a little bit of black. Always black should be the smallest amount of color that you put in there. You always want to try to create the shadows with colors before you resort to black. And then because the light is affecting the lemon, I'm going to add a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow to bring out those stronger greens where the light is touching. Also, the lemon has a very different texture. Where the apples and the pear are very smooth, the lemon is kind of bumpy. So I'm trying to recreate that bumpy texture to get as much information in there as possible. Okay, so for this exercise, you are going to create your own 3 studies using the illusion of chiaroscuro in color to create a more complicated design using the photos I give you. Have a good day.